Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Can you please indicate if you can hear us, sir? Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Please unmute yourself. Can you hear me now, sir?
I can hear you.
All right, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Right. Where are the other panelists?
We are here. Can I hear something?
Please, can you see? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I'm online.
I'm actually more. So last year I was on contract around.
I'm sorry, please. Is Sean Ali here?
Yes.
All right. You are supposed to be in charge. All right. You can start anytime. We are the audience. We are the audience.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Ibadan, will start shortly. I left my phone in the car. I'm just waiting
I can hear you.
to get a hold of my phone.
It's raining heavily in Ibadan, so it's messing up a lot of things.
Ah, okay.
Also, there is another problem.
Yes, go on, please.
Somehow, the panel for Black Orpheus and the panel for the travel poems have overlapped the timing.
Yes, I believe there are a few panels that are running at the same time. Were you meant to be in the other panel? Can you see those?
You can. Sir, did you hear the question, sir? Hello, sir. Can you hear did you hear the question, sir?
I can. What
Did you
was the
hear?
question?
She asked if you were meant to be on the other panel.
I have your questions, so I'm going with you.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
I think you should ask me again. Just ask me again.
Sir, were you supposed to be on the other panel? The traveling point panel?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me now, sir?
I can hear you.
Okay, sir. She's asking if you were supposed to be on the child's panel.
I am
Okay,
on this panel and
okay.
another panel. There's an overlap of about an hour. So you already sent your guides, so I'm taking you first.
Okay, welcome to this panel. Title of the panel is
No, please go on. Please go on.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to introduce what Black Orpheus was. I think some of our audience members are not familiar with the material. So let me take it from there and vis-a-vis what Olungo Africa is trying to do with the material now. So Black Orpheus, you might be familiar, sir, but I don't know, just for the benefits of anybody else that's listening and might not be familiar with what we're discussing. Black Orpheus was founded in 1957 by Ulibaye, and since then there have been a few runs of the publication. The first volume published saw publication of about 22 um 22 of those magazines that were done in the first publication up until 1993, where of course the editorial leadership changed. There was also they tried to revive the publication, but like I said, 93, everything came to a halt and became the journals themselves became very rare, and they're very expensive now. If at all you come across any of them. What Olungo Africa is trying to do with the digitization and just access to these materials is to find as many copies as we can find. Then the next stage is to digitize, and that has been done in collaboration with archiving, who are also based here in Lagos. To also publicize what we're doing, we've had to engage with other cultural institutions. Some of the partners are here with us. I mean, Ronnie, you heads Angels and News, and Tomiwa Adebola heads Guest Artist Space Foundation, also here in Lagos. But different activities just to ensure that access to these materials and the effort that has been put into digitizing them just doesn't go down the drain. So that's where we are, and there's a fellowship running, now. And we have, fellows who have access to digital scanned copies as well as physical copies. So, I mean, yes, I can now start asking you the questions, but I just have to give some sort of background to what we're doing and the reason why we're here. So, Mr. Ipadiola, let's start with you and perhaps what you know about
Yeah.
Black Orpheus itself. Let's just start from there. What's yes, there's Black Orpheus, but are there other influential magazines of the time and that you are familiar with, and maybe speak a bit more about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Black Orpheus is that publication that people of my generation, people born in the late 60s, early 70s, we grew up knowing there was such a publication that had the thoughts and the works of people, cultural workers from Nigeria mostly, but from the rest of Africa as well. But it was like a ghost perpetually whispering to us. We never had a hands-on experience up till the time I got out of university. I never saw a copy of Black Orpheus in my hands. By the way, today is World Music Day.
Yes.
And in the spirit of music, which Black Orpheus celebrates, which never dies, I think that the publication is one of those things that actually embodies the strivings, intellectual, cultural strivings of our predecessors. And of course, I'm happy that it's back in digital form, because otherwise it will remain that ghost that was always whispering to us from the fringes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, but I'm going to push a bit further and perhaps ask
Okay.
you about, you know, now that we're digitizing and it is to a certain level, there's some sort of access now. For you as a poet, for you as a translator as well, what do you think that even does for the kind of work you're doing?
All right. So that is a very, very interesting question. Black Orpheus is perhaps the first place where you encountered translations of Nigerian poets from indigenous languages into English, and really great quality translations, if I may say. Obotunde Ijimere, Ulibaya himself,
Yes.
I'm told that he operates under many pseudonyms.
Yes.
In Black Orpheus, you see this tremendous body of translations from many Nigerian languages. I'm familiar with the ones, the incantations from the Yoruba Hunter Ijala tradition, and they are fantastic quality. I actually don't think that the work we are doing, contemporary work we are doing, is in any way, shape, or form even close to the quality of translations we had then. But again, that is one reason why it is good to have publications such as Black Orpheus, because it establishes a benchmark against which we can actually see what we're doing, how good, how competent the efforts we're expending today is. I hope you understand. We have in Black Orpheus that benchmark already that we can measure ourselves against. Because like I said, if you read the translations of the Jala poems, the translations from the Igbo tradition in Black Orpheus, and you read what contemporary culture workers, poets, prose stylists are doing, it helps you to gauge just how well, how far along we are.
I think that's why I'll probably say you should maybe publish your do your Fagmoa's translation so other people can be attuned to the level and the standard that we need to sort of imbibe. But I'll just say one more thing just to pick up on something that you've also mentioned. The younger audience, right, and the younger writers, younger poets, people that are just coming into the space. Is Black Orpheus the true standard? Is there something they can take away? Do they have to copy? I get a bit worried when we say something is the standard, right? It's still open to interpretations and from our little research that we've also done, access and even would I say membership of some of these spaces at the time was still kind of limited, right? Where Mbari was, it was close to the market, it was in Ibadan, if you were not playing on a very high level, you couldn't sort of penetrate into that space. For the young audience now that's, are starting to even hear about it, it's a privilege to even hold a copy now. And even more so to read and sort of scan the pages online. But the younger poets, the younger writer, what should they be taking out of from engaging with Black Orpheus?
I think that the first lesson for younger writers is humility. Many times I come across young writers who think that they are the one that invented the wheel. And that is precisely because they've not had a chance to look at what went before. Last year, was it November of last year in Egypt, I had the opportunity to ask Professor Wole Soyinka about Black Orpheus and some of the other Mbari publications, which, you know, they churned out. And he said that at the time, they were very conscious of what they were doing. This was the first crop of African intellectuals who were doing something for themselves.
Yeah.
Not, of course, there is always the debate of where the funding came from, but they were very conscious of what they were doing for themselves. And they were also, I also spoke with Professor J.P. Clark. They also knew that they were doing this for every other artist or writer coming after them. So they were very, very conscious. We can take today the lesson of humility with us to see that, to understand that we are not the first to do these things. People have been doing it before us. We can strive to do better, and we should actually strive to do better. I have problems with some of the translations that generation did. But again, that goes back to your challenge to me and every other person of my generation and those coming after us to actually see whether we can do better. And I'm sure that in that process, we'll actually get to do something wonderful, the way that generation did.
Okay, let me just come back to you, and let me get Ronnie and Satonga to perhaps start share some thoughts about it, about Black Orpheus. You know, how has that been for you, and what do you think the game changer has been having access to the Black Orpheus now in your fields, as a writer yourself, and even as a curator? So I think I'm not interested in about the material side of the practice.
Yeah, so when I knew I was coming to speak at this panel, I made a post about my first impression about Black Orpheus. Black Orpheus was that magazine I have only heard of even to this point. Like it was always a reference where the masterclass from Chika Okeke and we mentioned the work that was done, level and quality of work, criticism, writing, literary writing that was done in Black Orpheus, and how that is sort of missing in today's era, and how there are only so few copies that are available in the world, and it's privileged to even have 1 or 2 copies, and he paid expensively for them. And in the way he spoke about them, these names, Ulibaya, and the work that he and other people did, there was that gap because I was curious, many of us were curious, but there was nothing to refer to. We couldn't say, oh, even though there are a few copies, go to this library, you can access it, or go to this person's collection, you can access it. So to know and that Global Africa is digitizing this, making this more accessible is exciting. There's the point of reference for which work can be created, for which research, because research is always important. So I'm going to pick on something you said about whether the quality of work is the standard. I don't think the question is as much as the standard, or if there's a reference for writers, curators to even look into to know what the future works that will be created should look like. Because coming to this space, there is that gap. There's been that huge gap about in literature. We know those that are before us. So that's poetry, writing, Cyprian Quincy, Chinua Achebe. There is that continuity and flow. However, in the visual arts especially, there is that whole gap of what happened in the 50s, what happened in the 40s, what happened in the 60s, and the reference of documentation for that, apart from maybe going to institutions like the Smithsonian to find the British Library. Yes, or the British Library to find copies of exhibition catalogs, or to even understand the way artists at the time thought about their creative process. It's missing. So you just go there, you just do work and try to keep the context in contemporary time without necessarily having enough reference from history to contextualize the work we're doing. So I think it's very important, it's exciting. At Angels and Youth, we hold residencies and a lot of questions. Some of our residents ask is do we have like yes, source of references, places, points of research. To be nice to have read copies of and it's not just Black Orpheus, there's also this magazine, New Nigerian, New Culture, yes, and that I only saw in an exhibition brought to Nigeria by late B.C. Silva, publishing Against the Grain, you know. So some of these remnants, I only saw it once. I know how it is, it's fragile, you can't necessarily open it, and somehow Mr. Victor has again paid expensive to get a collection of those things. So accessibility is going to, I believe, change the game. Maybe provide context for which in contemporary writers, curators can break the rules if I dare say so, at least know what has been done to maybe depart from it, create something new so that they're not creating in a vacuum. And it's also like Mr. Tani Badiola said, which I very much agree with, for people to understand, any creator to understand that you are reinventing the wheel. There's nothing that hasn't been done before. However, how can you do this differently? Do you want to consciously give credit to those that have done it before? And how does that shape your understanding for how you frame your work, be it curatorial work, art making, writing, and all of that? So yes, it's an exciting time with digitization of back office.
Thank you very much. I mean, great work that has been done for this project has been carried out by GAS. And I've been many talks with Tomiwa about how we're storing the materials, access, and all these things. But I know the library also holds other that similar material that a lot of people don't have access to anymore. You're taking care of them very lovingly and mostly, how they're stored, how they're even collected in the first place. But so I want you to speak a bit more about that. I know we do not have so many libraries that have when I say premium content, let me just put it that premium content, and then even opening space for people to come in and engage with the resources that are there. So I think I want you to speak a bit more from the librarian side / archivist and sort of a record keeping and all these things that we do. Yes.
Yes, so my role at GAS, over the past year has been more of a project management role, in the sense that I'm tasked with kind of building and growing our library project, really specifically to create access to the collection. We have a collection of about 2,000 materials focused specifically on African art. And a big the bulk of our collection was actually a donation of John's. I guess to anyone who knows that John was actually one of the first curators for the National Museum. He started his career here in Lagos with his by the superintendent was next month in the National Museum. And so that's a 60-year collection that we built, the people almost like the forefront of the conversation, because John obviously went on to become an academic, and then kind of very friendly right on topic, so just even holding that collection in itself as a cultural institution of such a huge responsibility. So as project manager, I ended up involuntarily or otherwise wearing multiple hats, and I got to experience and really get to I guess take on a lot of responsibility in the field of cultural preservation almost, because these are books that, again, unfortunately, as someone of the younger generation, don't get access to it, they don't come across them very often. And it's really been a challenge, which I think is something that, your questions, allude to, and really has been as one small, relatively, non-profit foundation community. It's the challenge of balancing, preserving the books versus providing access. It's like he wants as many young people to be able to engage in the work, and exactly as you were saying, have researchers be inspired, or even have a reference point. But at the same time, it's you have that into the collection itself, and you're trying to get access versus longevity. And how long can we hold this collection, especially with another side of if physically in terms of storage, where we live in tropical climates, how do you keep books or we're not specific, we don't have that level, so it's hard to actually store these things in a way that they get to the kind of live on, physically as they feel through work that we inspire. So it's really been a challenge. Thankfully, at the foundations, though we've been a resource, we get to have specialists on our team. So we have, archivists that we work with. We also work with a library specialist actually from the University of Lagos to make sure that what we're doing with the collection and how it can be supposed to show that, what everything we do is applied towards the materials themselves. It's still something we're figuring out, to be honest. I wish I could say that when you got to the answer. But one thing I will say, I guess, going back to your previous question about usefulness of the blood Orpheus, in the journal itself. I think from as someone working in development within the arts, I think as much as it's important to have the collection as a reference point for creating, outwards. I think it's also really important to take the collection for practitioners working on my side. To also kind of take that as a source of inspiration for how they be unfortunately, but also aware of the situation of the country that we're operating in. Unfortunately, we don't have the same systems that we had back then. We don't have the same, level of organization in our institutions, level of cohesion between institutions. And all this so jealous when I'm talking to someone the older generation, they get to tell me their experience as an undergraduate student, talking about, post independence and just the level of, organization that they got to enjoy, and quality that, of just life in general, so everything. We're talking about standards, and standards right then are so different. And so through the back of your journals and essentially thinking through a longer that studies will be some content. It's really been inspiring to me as someone particular about development from more of the project development on the fictional side. Because it just shows how artists band together, you would never imagine that. Should kind of trivial as that comes together, and it's because of the way we want nowadays. Everyone is their own individual, every artist. So there's a lot of individualism in the way that we look at things, but it's not cultural. It's not even cultural, and it's then not talking about not useful or productive. So it's very inspiring in that way as well. I think for not just for artists, it's not so you don't have to be someone a painter, you don't have to be a poet to find value in the stages. And even just I think it's so important what all that is doing, and that's part of why I thought the collaboration between the Gas Foundation and all those institutions was so important. So it's very a pleasure to even see how the partnership and the project has evolved the last few months and how we want to use it for all of us. But yeah, it's really tricky. Access is a big thing that we need to figure out. But at the same time, in order to even be able to offer access to structures and systems behind it, so it's a tricky one, but thankfully, I think we're not starving for passion, we're not starving for I guess an interest in my space. There's also people really trying to revive those things that we've lost.
I mean, I'm just going to speak to the fact that, when we also started the project, I mean, there's the literary side, that color is very vast and I'm coming from the more visual, coming from the visual arts side, and I'm like, okay, what can we make out of this? And for us, the only thing that sort of made sense was to collaborate with as many people, with as just have other experts come in, because there's no way that we can digitize ourselves. There's no way we could have kept the physical copies ourselves. There's also no way that we could, sort of say, okay, these are fellows and they need to come to Angels and News for support, whether it was residency or those sort of things that we had to just speak to certain people about. I have one question for Mr. Ibadola before maybe he runs off or something. I just wanted you to perhaps speak about what this really means for us in the 21st century, opening this lost will I say this lost material. I mean, what does that really mean for us? And perhaps what are also some things that we should take into account when we start to dig up and do research and find and really look for, because we're still looking for many of these journals. I mean, we have quite a substantial amount already, but I mean, volume 4, for example, is nowhere to be found. I haven't seen one copy of volume 4, and it's up to volume 6. So yes, I just wanted to maybe speak about that. In our search and our quest for opening up the archives. What do you think we should maybe also look out for in all that soon? Is it muted?
Sir, you need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, sir.
Right. I said first, we have to realize how fortunate, how lucky we are that we can retrieve these materials at all. And the fact that you have one volume that you have not yet laid your hands on sort of suggests how important it is to have these things all in place. The value of anything is determined by scarcity. And for a long time, we had no access. We did not even possess the technology to give us hope. When I was in university in the 90s, in the 80s, early 90s, there was a technology called a microfiche. And that technology, you have to go inside the reference section of the library, and you can only access, one person can only access the microfiche of a particular item at a time, one at a time. You now have in this project that the new Black Orpheus retrieval project that you guys are undertaking, you now have a technology in which if a scholar or an artist is interested in what is in the archives from New Zealand, from Denmark, from Argentina, from the North Pole, everyone can now access these things simultaneously. I think it is a miracle. And I think we should, first of all, see it for what it is, that we have a miracle in our hands. If we are tempted, if we are ever tempted to minimize just what it is that this project of retrieval, restoration has done, let us just gauge it against those volumes, those publications we cannot yet find, because Black Orpheus is just one out of maybe the first, but it's just one out of like 5 that we have not yet been able to retrieve. So we should not see ourselves as pirates who are, who've come upon gold, this stash of gold. We should see ourselves as fortunate inheritors of a legacy that is worth celebrating, that is worth propagating properly. I have been in situations where people have asked me, people from other cultures who still think that we live on trees. They've asked me, what were your people doing 100 years ago? These projects like it are things that enable us to answer in articulate ways. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you to think about this initiative as it sort of relates to convention and interest and needs, such because usually they think it's right. I know we are the ministry of launch that we're doing this, but I know that other attended was have that.
And so, beyond being a residency, physical residency or artist, it falls language. What this means is that we are excited about experimentation. We're not looking for finished work. We're excited about new ways of thinking, new ways of expression, and all of this while bridging the gap, creating network amongst artists, curators, and art practitioners. And I'm excited about Black Orpheus in the sense that beyond the 1 or 2 fellows who have come to Angels and Muse to have sort of residency in the research of this project, I'm excited about the future of what more people or how more artists, curators could reinterpret this. Could it be through design? Could this be through exhibition making? Could this be through performance arts, and simply even from a curatorial perspective, because let's be honest, it is also memory. Black Orpheus is memory, it's a living archive. So if it would be exciting to find or to come across or present an opportunity for artists to create works based on their experience by embodying their sort of findings or research that can be reinterpreted in other ways, right? So yeah, I'm looking forward to more forms of expression, and it's something that Angels should be excited to showcase, or whether we are not directly or indirectly involved, even as a cultural practitioner and a curator myself, I look forward to the various forms of expression or re-expression. And yes, that is beyond just a publication.
It is for me. I'm looking at everything from a place of disciplinary practice that this is really going to burn.
Yeah.
I mean, when we started the project, for example, we started off the project as an exhibition.
Yeah.
So we exhibited the covers at Artex, yeah, and that was kind of like the beginning of the discussions, because we have artists, we have even writers will come and everybody was like, oh, like what's this about? What is this about? There was some other people in the audience that knew about it, and they're like, oh, finally, we see it in person, right?
Yeah.
But for us, and it was really important that we opened the space up for other people to really think about these things and not just be secluded for just writers or just a certain group of intellectuals. We really had to sort of like push narrative as well. So for us, we're looking at visual artists, and I think there are 2 people that are making. They're not writing, two of the fellows are not writing, so the reality is you're looking to have an exhibition, again, the fellowship, and there's also everything that you is uh, experimenting and really finding the ways that should interpret a subject area. And for me, I also just wanted to speak about authorship. So you mentioned memory, and of course, this now has become, memory something in recent times has only been able to engage first of all, showing that who, vividly remembers, and as Mr. Badiola has also shared earlier, vividly remembers his contributions to Black Orpheus. And there was also something that I discovered from reading through the material was there were 3 poems that he even wrote and doesn't even remember that he wrote them. Oh, wow. So we kind of termed those as like lost poems, but I mean they're there. He was a contributor at some point. He was even, on the editorial board.
Yeah.
And I start to find that if we're not careful, sometimes we might just replicate, former gatekeeping and all these many things that we also complain about, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say are some things that we really need to just be mindful of so that we're not replacing one gatekeeper with another, with another gatekeeper, yeah.
I think it's something that Olongo is already doing. That's collaboration. And in addition to that, I'll say it's interesting you said Yadi and another artist are doing other forms, experimenting. Yadi is presenting an exhibition. I think something that could come out of this is if every year, will be annually, will be every 2 years, there's an open call for reimagining, reinterpreting Black Orpheus, just to see the varied expressions, and in an open call, we can expand the audience for which this can happen. You could even extend it to AI, you can extend it to science. I mean, the more people come across it, the more it's talked about, the more it's become there's the word is that we propagated and Mr. Tade Babiola just used. And I think that is important, or else it's just going to be this hush, okay, Bolongo has it, Gas has it. But the more people, and I think that's the importance of digitizing, the more people can interpret, the more you will have different perspectives and different preferences that can then serve as a form of reference for the next generation of artists, writers, creative scientists, because contrary to what many think, I think art and science are related. Yeah, and for which research can be done, like you said, project management. A lot of us, I mean, we just get carried away with all the work we do, what she spoke about. And she spoke about being project manager behind projects, and from the point of view of the people doing that's the science of archiving and keeping these memories alive and accessible. You understand that it's one big ecosystem, and the more you collaborate, the more you open. And I mean, not just even to cultural custodians. The point we talked about, which I think Yoruba calls incantations, what would that look like today? I mean, now we are in a time where we've sort of villainized and even demonized to an extent incantations. What would that mean? But it's interesting that by the time they interpret this for you, these are strong, powerful, meaningful, that touches you to your soul, and depending on what's being said to you, especially if it's like a prayer or a wish, feel this wholesomeness. What would that be like to have a version of that, in today's times that is leveraging on what has been done? It doesn't have to be the same thing, but how can that be reimagined? That's why I said it would be interesting to have this, to see how long, I mean, if you do that for about 5-10 years, it would be amazing the body of work that would have been produced. Yeah, based on
access to. I mean, this all started as well. I mean, the fellowship was a call, so it wasn't some people were selected.
Yeah.
That's how to call people that applied. Went through many applications, many
Yes,
submissions,
yes.
and finally got to select 10 people. We wanted to do more, but of course, funding and sort of seeing and everything else couldn't be stretched more than that resources that were available. So what did you got anything wanted to speak about in terms of like gatekeeping and
Well, definitely, I think it's very interesting, all the conversations that we're having now in this art space around, how we handle our campaigns, I think from the programs perspective, the battle that we're kind of fighting as well is that before we start reimagining what can we actually be aware, can we take stock of what was there?
yeah.
So, through the library and the foundation, even my personal passion as well, why the project was because unfortunately there was this huge gap. There's like it's a massive knowledge base. So exactly like you touched on conversation. For young researchers, right, specifically just young Nigerians in general, for example, you don't get to have that confidence of having your words. You have an Italian person, you have an American person, you go with them, and you can tell me they were 100 years ago, like just like 7 minutes. Unfortunately, and not because there was nothing there, it's not because there was no one more for us, it's just because we don't have that privilege to have been constantly, to have been familiar with the history, or to have been kind of invited with the history just because it was lost, just because there were issues of access just back then, not now. So for me, I think with every project that I'm involved in, people that develop, and I'm really big on, first of all, can we take ourselves back to school and just be students of agriculture and actually exactly like you're saying, from the rest, it sounds really, aspects of the culture that have been demonized. It's a huge problem,
Yeah.
especially within the arts, just because, because of how closely arts, culture, and religion and spirituality, in West Africa and those how closely interlinked they are. We're always kind of coming up against roadblocks when it comes to, I guess, disseminating that history and knowledge, because lots of us have been taught to be scared, like, oh, this sounds a bit, fetish. I mean, even the term, what is fetish and what is primitive and what is, human adjacent, for the lack of a better word. You need to really even go back, and it's only through actually studying the history and even getting to understand where did this, come from, where did this, I guess, this what's the word? This distaste for our own, spirituality, traditional culture come from. And when you read through, which I think this is what part of why I'm so keen on first educating people from the rest of the world is that before we even start to try and twist it into something else, so make it more than temporary. And that's one side of but the other side is that we're always, the conversation about archives, we're always kind of looking to the past, but then we also look to the present, because again, we have that system services as well. So it's like the way Shrika and Levi and us in the movie, they banded together and they, created this memory capsule in Black Orpheus. What we have to do, what we have to, of this similar standard, because we're talking about standards of being how have we, also captured the last 20 years? Because it's not only the 50s that we're done, it's not only the 70s that we're done. And so how our programs and how is the work that we're doing, where we're using the funding that we're able to, how are we making sure that we're honoring the past, honoring the present, honoring the history? That's really the main thing, as opposed to, for my thinking from the projects, but being a more admin focused, structured person, or these initiatives. It's mostly just how can we make sure that everything we do, we honor the ultimate, policy and these agendas, which is the culture. It's cultural representation. It doesn't have to look the way it looks outside. It doesn't have to look like a position. They can, therefore, it has to services. So that's I like that word you use, honor.
Um, I was gonna go to. Okay, I'll come. Yeah, maybe sure. If you want to, I just have one question for him. Mr. Badiola, are there any legal and ethical issues that we should be considering in all of these, things that we're discussing? I want you to put your lawyer hat on for a minute. I know this is not this is not your office or the courts, but would like to hear about that. I'm interested to hear about that. I'm a lawyer myself, and these are some things I also think about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, generally, I found that Africans who came on the scene, who first attempted to document, to put together many of these journals, did not really pay attention to the legalities of the situation as at that time. And this affects everyone, not just the small writers. This affects the big writers. This affects the Nobel laureate himself. I remember that even I, as a lawyer, sometimes overlook just how important the legal aspects of these things are. When I was going to interpret, translate Fagua, I met the eldest son, and he said, please go ahead. The more translations we have of my father's work, the better for us. And I just I dove into it. I went into it, and lo and behold, the gentleman dies.
Wow.
And suddenly I realized that I did not do the needful. The man had an extended family in which there was a lot of contention about who gave who the right to do this and that. And suddenly I'm in the middle of all that.
Yes.
And so people have asked me, when are you going to publish this translation? And I said, when I sort out the legal problems.
Yeah.
But beyond that, certain aspects of what we are doing is already protected in terms of the folklore, the international copyright conventions regarding folklore.
Yeah.
But that said, when you translate folklore, the copyright to the translation is in the translator. So that is something to keep in mind also. There are now many opportunities to go to Hollywood and convert mythologies into blockbuster Marvel or DC films. We need to actually start the process of engaging lawyers in these things. For what has already been done that is being retrieved, I think that there is still room to look at the legalities, not for us as such, but to protect what we are doing from expropriation and appropriation by those who do not really mean well for us. I don't want to go into specifics, but there was this man called V.S. Naipaul who came to Nigeria, went to East Africa, and wrote a book called Mask of Africa. And he practically went about defaming and just distorting our histories and our cultural achievements. And he was protected by many because they feel, well, a Nobel laureate cannot do any wrong. Wrong. A Nobel laureate can do wrong. And so we need to, in the 21st century, go beyond our passion for the subject and start, looking. pay the lawyer. So pay the lawyer and let the lawyer tell you what you need to do to actually keep all your bases covered. That's what I have to say without selling my skills or yours.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much. I mean, it's important we're aware of these issues that come up, and I like what you said that sometimes it's not necessarily for us. It's for what happens after we've even done the work and other people want to build on the work that you've also done, right? So all these things about copyright, intellectual property, and just protecting the work you've done is really, really something that we should always be conscious about. But like I
yes,
said, we're collaborating with so many people. It's the same way that I tell creative professionals to also hire lawyers and hire accountants and business people that can run affairs on certain fronts.
yeah. It's needful now. Because there's a lot of money involved now. There's a lot of money involved now. And you want to be sure nobody's cheating. Have you seen Sinners?
Yes,
The
yes.
the the guy drew heavily from West Africa, specifically Yoruba uh,
Mhm.
mythology. He
Yes.
was he, he was kind enough to acknowledge it openly, but we all
You have reservations.
yes, no, we want that kind of project to continue so that when the next guy has the next big idea, we
Mm.
can say thank you very much for coming up with this idea, but you know what, you will pay toll. So we can keep going as a culture. Thank you.
Yes, yes, thank you so much. Ronnie, you wanted to respond to something?
Yes, she mentioned about, it's not just about documentary or looking into the fifties. What has been done in the last is important to document the last 10 years or the last 20 years and so forth, which is true and which is important. And it also made me think about what Satani Badiola said about scarcity is what gives value to things. So yes, the focus now is Black Orpheus, but I want to say that in inviting response to Black Orpheus for people to look into, I would imagine that it's not necessarily um, a simple focused research, Cheryl would know this. Before I joined Angels and Wheels as programs director, I worked with Nicola Oyebode on TSC Arts Magazine, which I think she ran for over 10 years, and of which I was of that 10 to 12 years, I was part of the last 8. And it's a very difficult journey doing that without funding. And then when we couldn't continue, we had to transition, or shut down. However, and I think this is the point I'm trying to touch on, it's important that in doing any work, I think this is sort of like, let's say, call to action or an admonition. In doing any work, it's important that and we look at that work outside of ourselves. And I think that is what Certainly, but Abdul said about Tony Shoyinka and John Pedro Clark, understanding that this work will exist outside of themselves and serve as a form of reference. So if more artists, more writers, more creative practitioners approach this work as work that will exist outside of themselves, outside of what will bring them fame or recognition, but something that can outlast them, then there will be more for more people to hold on to. So again, TSA had to shut down, but we had to keep the website, go back there.
I was going to say, because now CSA is an archive and it's crazy to think about it as an archive.
Yes.
It had just always been there. I mean, from what,
Yeah,
I mean, all my years of, doing X, Y, Z.
yeah.
CSA it always reference, always. as to be agreed, but now that's what we're saying, it's kind of
So it's always very emotional for me because it wasn't something we wanted to do, or we were forced to, and something we decided to do when we switched off the lights. Now keep it as an archive that has to be there. So that means even if you don't do anything, if you can't afford to pay writers, you can afford to commission writers, we will continue to spend resources on the color spend resources to make sure that the website is always available for people to reference because again, you have artists, writers from around Africa, even though we are based in Nigeria, like documented biennales, documented events that happen, yes, even in Asia, yeah. So this way, this and when you put in when you do that volume of work, you wouldn't even want it to go down the drain because first of all, it takes a certain level of commitment to be able to do that work. And yes, and it was something that again seemed like there was not we didn't perceive that value. So it's making me the scarcity or the work that has been done or the fact that it's no longer available. Yes, or now that Black Orpheus is now digitized, people say, oh, it's always be there when I have time, as one of those things. So again, it made me think about how we place value in things. Should it be based on scarcity or based on its content? Yeah,
I'm curious to know why you're shaking your head.
Oh, just because I don't necessarily think that the value of some things minimize this.
I don't agree. I mean, in some instances, there are some things that happen, or some events that happen. So the fact that you're saying
that, yeah.
it was there, it was, within a certain range of certain range in value, right? And then something happened, and then, the price is just rocketed. And when you have the exhibition, take occurrence,
Yeah.
exhibition that feels just please.
It's one thing to agree, then it's another thing for you to see reality justifying that.
Yeah.
So again, the new culture magazine, again, I know someone that has spent a lot of money. The question is if it was everywhere, would that same value? I'm not saying by the person, you understand? I mean, we all buy books because buy different things because we like, I mean, there are publications every day, books come out and we buy them. So again, it makes me think, but I feel and I can't help but agree to an extent that a lot of I will use the word value, a lot of excitement that is being a lot of excitement around Black Reviews right now is because a lot of us haven't seen it. We've heard so much about it, but we haven't seen it.
I'll speak more on that. So I don't want to be a
Yeah.
because I also don't work in a certain
Yeah.
establishment, so I can't speak to
Yeah.
how access to physical copies is sort of run. But lastly, I just want John to speak about your other interests, right? So I'm specific about outside Africa. Maybe to touch on that these discussions we're having now and what you do and or what you set out to do with that. Because I mean it starts off on a certain platform and then it morphs into something else. I didn't even know that you ran outside Africa, but I've always just seen it around, But yeah, you just want to share something that I know it's not function.
No, thank you. I'm more than happy to share. So outside Africa is essentially something I founded. It's an entry level platform for conversation about Africa. And I guess it's a passion project of sorts, just kind of a step from my own experience and this personal I guess like I always felt about the connection between history and production. And it's silly because I lived my whole life in Nigeria and it's still so far away from our history and our roots on this in a way that never could even have been possible because even 2 years ago, every generation just gets worse. So having conversations with other young people and people I know like us and gets into programs and friends and drafting artists and residents. we're all kind of suffering from the same illness, which is all that. And so it's essentially just a way to keep people in touch with us. And it's a way to kind of also address the issue of access because, again, we're always talking about access for archival projects and access to archival material, but we don't really realize that even today now, ourselves don't have access, unfortunately, and not because it's impossible, but just because it's kind of just been overlooked, like people just,
I've had to look at things that you shared. And what I found intriguing about it was the fact that, I mean, it could be the biggest fair, right? And everybody's talking about it, but it was certain things that they had picked out of the fair that I just thought, okay, maybe I could have just easily missed this and don't, but I'm just really happy that it's very good, but everyone is solely focused on a certain, also on the certain narrative. And it doesn't always have to be this big thing, right? There's something that's happening on us. I think we should be more conscious of exactly that sense to highlight.
Yeah, it's just an attempt to kind of I guess address that within the arts it's very easy to kind of present things a certain way, just without really. I think some of the challenge of access from my experiences is just the fact that the art space is used to operating within itself with itself.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, like you're talking about value, and I guess possibly why I was shaking my head is because if we're talking about economics and pricing and money, of course, scarcity, sense demand and supply. But if we're talking about the non-monetary value, which is much more than another part this inspiration for artists and not national pride bonds. Then we kind of go into everyone, but to handle this topic in a certain way that we have in a way that we haven't been. So art guide is just a really small form of intervention of sorts to try and allow the general public, people that don't have that form of training, that experience, with curatorial, with curatorial works or even with, like art itself and the creative process. So just even come and touch base and get to know and even if they don't fully understand it, then also so allow people to be aware, even if they don't know what it is, they can say, oh, actually, we had that last year, and we have this last year, there's this collective, and there's this person, and we have those things, I don't know all about it, but any day they do want to know, they know where to go. So that's that.
Well done. I'm gonna open up the floor for questions. Thank you, panelists, for being engaging. I mean, I think I have one last question to ask everybody, and then we'll wrap up, but please, audience, if you'd like to speak with us, if you'd like to say things.
Good question. I'm sorry to keep me, but I don't know if you spoke about what it takes to preserve these items, like looking at resources. How do you learn how to preserve? I mean, I missed your introduction, so we probably trained in how to do this kind of preservation. But I was just wondering what it takes and resources to do this.
Okay, so because my introduction is that I'm not from chain. I was actually the project manager for my project. We were able to acknowledge that, and then we worked as an institution with the archivists, and then learning sessions from the university because so these people work and train school, fellowships, and they have that experience to be able to come right us. So what we do, I think, kind of boils more into on ground is unfortunately it's really hard to find storage materials legally. So unfortunately we have to import it for but it's things then wasn't protected against being aware that unfortunately tropical climates and even nice warm weather can actually be hindrance to also be subjected to things like having just resistance
specific because you have shelves made by people and it's medical just all your strong things like having LGBT present and so it's that kind of if you're asking about the more manual it feels like then how like what it takes to actually do this kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of easier for me. No, I think so. I can speak from my side of things. I think it just takes a awareness. Just should be that's something that's lacking. We don't always have that yes, awareness or like mindfulness. You wouldn't know that an archivist is necessary for these things. Unfortunately, it's very uncommon to even to even hear of someone working in like or practice or someone specializing in that. And talk about economic library such as solution on public libraries in private libraries and not necessarily very well funded. So it takes practitioners done, sorry, institutions working with people, professionals working with people to also have that aside from just again the arts and hospital side of things, where it really needs to be that consciousness and that inspiration from all the manually good posting on and speaking. Actual institutional side. So that's what it's done.
Questions? I don't know. So this is a very basic question, just, is the website?
I came in late,
What is it? And the other question I have was for, obviously, Viola, about the translation. So I'm really interested, in hearing more about the translation and the copyright issues. Have there been any other issues? I know Ibrahim Shemay has done a house of translation of things that apart, but he's not, for years, not been able to get permission from that Shemay Foundation for that. So I'm just interested in hearing any other experiences you've had with getting copyright permissions for your translations.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are there other issues with translation? Is that the question?
Well, yes, I mean, I'm interested in anything you have to say about translation, but in particular, the copyright issues. I mentioned that, Ibrahim Shemay has done, house of translation of Things Fall Apart and has not been able to get permission from the HIV Foundation or his agents. And so I'm just really interested in hearing any more stories you have about that.
Okay. So I'll try to be as politic as possible. There are problems with translations and translators in Africa that are not necessarily present elsewhere. For example, in the West, most of the families are nuclear and it's not a polygamous arrangement. Here, you have this polygamous arrangement where every leg of the family decides that you must have our say so before you can go ahead with what our progenitor has done. That is a unique problem that every translator in Africa has to bear in mind. I don't think that translators in Europe or America or Asia necessarily deal with that problem. Secondly, there's a difference when you're translating living authors, dead authors who are still within copyright. That's 70 years of the disease of the author, and works that are already in the public domain. Works already in the public domain are works that are now exist 70 years after the death of the author, and to which a publisher has not acquired the rights in perpetuity or for a considerable length of time. The easiest to do are works already in the public domain, but that is not, those works are not necessarily the most germane works that you want to have translated. And here I think that we suffer from an absence of publicists and really established publishing houses that can engage critical works uh, in a manner that will make it easier for the translator to just face the job of translating without wondering whether this will be a love of labor instead of a labor of love. One of the things that I personally have learned to encourage translators to do is to actually get a contract in place so that at least when you have expended this labor over 10, 5, 10 years, you're sure that your sweat and blood will count for something. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but yes, there are concerns, copyright concerns that creep up here that are not necessarily the problem elsewhere.
Thank you.
I'll ask my last question and then we can just wrap up.
Okay.
What I have here, what is one future possibility that shining black Orpheus has made visible to you? Just one. I know there's many. The most pertinent one.
One of the most important things Black Orpheus has done is to help me as a a thinking theoretical uh, uh, writer to see what it was literally at the dawn of creation on the continent. And this is what I guess I'm not being clear, but this is what I mean. So I interviewed Professor Shoyinka and I said, you were there when Eskia and Falele published in the Black Orpheus. And he said, yes. Eskia and Falele was one of the first Black South Africans to publish in Black Orpheus. And for him, it's like the experience with James Ngugi, who became Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Ezekiel Mfalele became Eskia Mfalele after his encounter with the Black Orpheus crew. He had to be Ezekiel Mfalele to have anything published in South Africa. But he could publish in Black Orpheus here as Eskia Mfalele without any constraints whatsoever. That to me is significant because as a writer, I can imagine the amount of creative freedom the gentleman began to experience simply because he could now work under his own name without somebody imposing this or that on him. I think those are things we overlook, and I think portals or platforms like Black Orpheus show us what is possible with these things going forward.
Thank you so much. I like that example that you gave. Thank you.
I think I've indirectly touched on it before. I'm excited about the responses, from a curatorial perspective of someone who runs an organization that is keen on experimentation and critical thinking. So I'm excited about the responses that artists, writers, curators put forward and the result of their attention is Black space.
I think I'm just, really full on the, level of awareness that this is going to be. I know this going to cause a huge solar effect. Through the level of the Orpheus project, the only people, especially who would get to touch base programs on, and that's going to snowball that curiosity is going to, let and allow, lots of things that unfortunately I think that like, people to be revived, including exactly like all this, opportunities that aren't available from this one, so many more opportunities coming on that. This project is just going to, it's everything else that's happening, we push it, and lots of the work that see. Thanks for this.
Well, I mirror, some of these thoughts, and that's also why we're doing this project and looking at just expand build an act. But just for people who don't know what Orpheus is doing, with Orpheus, like we said, this started off as an exhibition last year at ArtX, and at the time it was just what could be done, and how best we can make sense of what we've found. But moving forward, we were speaking to more people. We had to partner with a lot of people to specialists and do the work that they do. So we got it digitized, and after digitizing, there was an open form for fellows to apply. Submissions were sent in, and we had to filter through all of that and selected 10 people. So of those 10, some are scholars, some are visual artists, some are writers, thinkers, anything that you like to call them. But I think the most important thing was for them to be able to experiment, and that's the state that they are at now. And what we're thinking to do after the fellowship is to have another public showcase. In this year alone, but some of the things we're also doing is to have like forums like this, so we can participate in the Lagos Studies Association. I think we were in Ghana 2 weeks ago as well for the Digital Humanities Conference. I can't even remember all the things that yeah, but there are many of these public forums before we get to the end of this year, where the fellows present their work. We have a public forum who are trying to present their work publicly and also publicly engaged, more people engaged. And then we'll see what happens after. But we're also very excited to see what's going to happen. And we're very but access to the digital digitized versions of Black Orpheus are on the website. So www.olongoafrica.com. There are no passwords, they need to sign up to anything. So please go there, download resources that have you. Thank you everybody for participating. Mr. Have a good day.